All right, cool. What's up, everyone? It's Dr. Jacob Wilson. You're here at ASPI. We're going to be talking about basically, actually, it is all about you today. We're going to be answering your questions live, and anything you have for me, anything you want to ask, I'll be here to answer that question. So basically, just kind of, I'm going to go ahead and throw a topic out there though while this gets built up. And that is essentially what we're going to talk about. Essentially, is what's the topic? Oh, basically cognitive function. So, especially one of the things that we're actually doing in our lab right now is we're looking at like concussions, cognitive health with ketogenic dieting and exogenous ketones. So, one of the big topics, the major topics that's actually out there, is essentially what happens when you get a concussion, right? So when you actually get a concussion, your brain goes through what we call an energy crisis, and it can't use glucose very well. However, it can still use ketones, and so that's actually a really big thing, that we think is very exciting. So, kind of going into that light, basically we think exogenous ketones can be huge for that. So we're super excited about that topic in general. The second thing I kind of want to get into is, again, like anything that you have as far as your questions. You do know that next week is Keto Academy. So we're super excited about Keto Academy. It's going to be freaking awesome. And in fact, it's going to be really cool. So we're going to basically talk about, Ryan and I will actually talk about at Keto Academy a lot of different topics. And one of those topics is going to be essentially like how to optimize your own physical conditioning. Because the thing about Prove It and the thing about the whole ketogenic lifestyle is this is not just about exogenous ketones. We think exogenous ketones will change. They do change the game, but it's what they do to your whole life, right? They improve your cognitive function, they make you on point, they make you feel better about yourself, and that puts you in the optimal state to optimize your health. And part of that's essentially like truly figuring your diet out, truly figuring out what your exercise program should be. And so that's what we're going to really get into during this time when we get into Keto Academy. So I encourage all of you guys to go to Keto Academy. It's going to be in Orlando, where Disney World is, so you guys will be able to check out Disney World, all the amusement parks, and again, we're going to have a lot of fun kind of at this event. So, with that said, let's get into your questions. So that was a good question someone asked real quick here. Someone goes, can you explain the benefits of ketogenic dieting for bodybuilders, powerlifters, and endurance athletes? And this is Mary Magazine. So you explain the benefits of ketosis for bodybuilders, powerlifters, and endurance athletes. Okay, so real quick, Mary, that's definitely like an area that we feel comfortable with. So bodybuilders, biggest thing that we see is that, especially with bodybuilding, you have to gain size and lose fat at the same time. Typically, when you try and lose fat, you lose a lot of muscle with that. We found that ketones themselves protect muscle from being burned up. So I think that's one thing that's definitely critical. You can maintain your muscle and your metabolism while you're dieting down. So we like that a lot. As far as like powerlifters, I mean, powerlifting in large part, yes, it's about muscle, but a lot of it's about your central drive, meaning like how well your nervous system is responding when you train, right? Because your brain ultimately triggers the muscle to respond. So basically, so that's very, very important to sort of understand. And so ketones essentially enhance central drive, and they mask fatigue. So you can train harder, and because you have greater central drive, potentially lift more weight. And powerlifting is all about like how much your total is, how much weight you're lifting on the bench, squat, and deadlift. For endurance athletes, it just makes sense. There was a recent study that found that exogenous ketones during an endurance bout were actually preferred over glucose, even when given with glucose, and endurance performance went up. So it's more efficient fuel. In fact, the heart runs greater than 25% more efficient when given ketones relative to just glucose. So that is the benefits that I see. Okay, so let's see what else we got here. Keto and type 2 diabetes. This is an area that's being researched a lot with Dr. Volek's laboratory, and they're seeing a lot of benefits. Basically, type 2 diabetes is generally your muscles and your tissues aren't as sensitive to insulin any longer, but ketones enhance insulin sensitivity. So that's a benefit in that light. So I also have Andy here. He's going to ask questions if I miss them. So let's see what other questions we have here. Okay. Kathy asks, can synthetic hormones stall or negatively affect keto OS? I don't see why it would. Let's see what else. Crystal says, hi Crystal. Okay. Let's see. Someone goes, all right, like I said, keep asking your questions. How can I combat freezing to death when I'm in ketosis? I don't see why that would be the case. Put on a sweater.
Does the body see an exogenous ketone the same as it sees an endogenous ketone?
If it's from Prove It, yes. Because just because of the type of ketones that Prove It has, it's the only brand that actually has a more of a bioidentical ketone that's available on the market. So yes.
Can Keto OS increase blood pressure?
No.
Why does Keto Max make me feel tired? From Skylar.
So I don't see why Keto Max would make you tired. Remember, there's a lot of factors that are involved when you're talking about your life in general. So it could be there's other stressors in your life. You may have not gotten as much sleep. You might be working harder. Maybe you have a lot of energy with the Keto OS, and so you're training super hard now and exercising and more active, and that just puts a drain on your body, but it directly is not going to make you more tired.
Can you explain how Keto Max helps with workouts?
Yeah, so Keto Max basically is going to do two things. Number one, it's going to enhance central drive. So in other words, you're going to be more cognitively focused. Two, the other thing we found kind of in our lab is that it makes you perceive the workout as being less difficult. So that'd be the second thing. And then the third thing is that we actually found that the ketones in Keto OS stimulate directly protein synthesis. So when your muscles adapt, that adaptation is actually occurring via changing things like protein synthesis. So you might make, synthesis is making new proteins. So you might make new proteins for energy. You might make new proteins for muscle. You know what I mean? So those are the ways that it's going to help with working out.
Is it okay to still take whey protein, creatine, and amino acid with Keto OS?
Is it okay? Yes. It's okay to take amino acids with keto. In fact, here's the thing. Keto OS actually spares or protects the beneficial amino acids from being broken down. So it actually may be synergistic.
Does the amount of ketones you need exogenously depend on body weight, size, men, women?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I think if you have someone who weighs like, someone like Shane, for example, is one of the big guys in Prove It community. He's probably like 250 pounds, right? So for him, he might need a pack and a half. For a guy like me, I'm 180 pounds, a pack's going to be just fine.
Is it okay for someone with hormone issues, such as thyroid issues, to take Keto OS?
But I don't see any contraindications.
MS and ketones.
So there's actually good research now coming out with MS and ketones. So basically, almost any central disease that's like, whether it's the brain or the spinal cord, a lot of them are caused by not being able to use glucose. And same thing happens in MS, but also mitochondrial dysfunction. So mitochondria is where you use energy and where we produce energy. Ketones themselves can be used as a fuel when glucose is not able to be used fully as a fuel. So that's one. And then two, ketones themselves seem to increase mitochondrial function in the amount of mitochondria you have. So that's why studies are showing it could be beneficial.
How does KetoOS make somebody go into ketosis faster?
So KetoOS itself provides exogenous ketones. So basically, if you're providing exogenous ketones, your blood levels of ketones are going to rise. You know, so I think that's the method that it's sort of driving you into ketosis.
How would somebody already using a ketogenic diet benefit from KetoOS?
The thing is with a ketogenic diet is, by itself, it becomes difficult to maintain. So, for example, I travel a lot. So in the last week, I traveled like Indianapolis, I traveled to Ohio, I traveled to California, and then I come back and I'm filming movies, and then I'm developing content, and you know I'm running a lot of experiments on ketones, or you know, like overseeing a lot. So that's a lot of stress. And so when you're under a lot of stress, your hormones like cortisol will raise up, and cortisol can like cause the production of more glucose. And so what I'm saying is that sometimes you can get kicked out of ketosis just from stress, or your protein gets up too high and you get kicked out of ketosis. This makes sure that you're always in that optimal zone. Or if you are in a ketogenic diet, you may not be in the optimal zone. KetoOS essentially ensures that you stay in that optimal zone.
How does keto affect migraines?
You know, that's interesting. I think there's actually some data out there now that ketones can help with headaches and migraines. And, you know, the mechanism for that, we don't necessarily know. But again, the brain requires a lot of energy. And so it's possible that providing a more efficient energy source, that it can help treat those headaches itself. So again, it could be that the brain can't utilize glucose as well when you have a state of being with chronic migraines, and so it's treating it that way. But there could be a lot of other reasons as well. We just do know that it seems to help.
Can you consume too much exogenous ketones? Can there be too much in the blood, and if so, what happens?
So typically, here's the thing. You got to think about this with ketones. Like if you look at like, you know, a pack of KetoOS, it's not that many ketones. Okay, you know, it's like it's enough to put you in that optimal state, right? So you'd have to, and your body also has like feedback mechanisms. So you'd have to take a ridiculous amount of like packs of KetoOS to cause those problems. So again, like if you're sticking with the recommended amount, like, you know, anywhere from 1 to 4 packs a day, you're fine.
Can ketones or KetoOS increase blood pressure?
No.
Do you need to take any other supplements while using KetoOS?
Well, there are other supplements that can complement KetoOS, and that's why I know that Pruvit's coming up with, you know, a KetoOS operating system line of supplements that support the ketogenic lifestyle. So that stuff's actually going to be coming out very soon. If you're at Keto Academy, you're going to hear a lot more about that. So there are supplements, but Pruvit is coming out with those. I know they also have Keto Cream, and Keto Cream is obviously very beneficial, you know, especially with breakfast.
You touched on diabetes, but is there any research on ketones, exogenous ketones, and colitis?
So basically, think about colitis as an inflammatory disease, and when you think about that, ketones themselves, in fact, this was published in Nature, are very anti-inflammatory in nature. Okay, so colitis is a highly inflammatory disease, and so we actually have some preliminary data with one of our subjects who has like Crohn's, where they had high amounts of inflammation, and the ketones lowered it drastically. So I'd imagine it'd be the same thing with something like colitis. But any generalized inflammation, ketones are anti-inflammatory. So whether that's like colitis or, you know, IBD, or even we've had athletes in here who have turf toe, which is an inflammation, down in the foot region, where we've used ketones to actually lower that inflammation successfully.
Ketones in autism.
So ketones in autism has actually been studied actually quite a lot recently. So again, you're looking at autism. Individuals' brains have an impaired ability to utilize glucose. And we think that's what leads to a host of the symptoms that they see. However, they can use ketones. So when they take exogenous ketones or a ketogenic diet, or better yet, a combination of the two, a lot of their symptomology improves.
Any research on KetoOS or ketones and chronic fatigue syndrome?
Here's the thing. Again, what is fatigue? If you were to describe it, you'd say a lack of energy, right? And a lot of that is driven cognitively itself. So the thing to understand is that ketones themselves, being a superior energy source, can help ameliorate like a lot of the signs of like this chronic fatigue syndrome.
Any research on ketones and schizophrenia or bipolar disorders?
Yeah, there actually is some research on ketones and schizophrenia and bipolar disorders. I actually just saw this at a conference recently. It was a case study with someone who had schizophrenia, and they went on a ketogenic diet, elevated their ketones, and it actually reversed the condition. Now, of course, we need to, I'm not saying anything definitively. What I'm saying is there is some small amount of data helping with that. Every single cognitive disease that I've seen has an impairment in the ability to utilize glucose. So you have an energy crisis. If you have an energy crisis in the brain, it can manifest itself through several things: schizophrenia, bipolar disorders, dementia. And so, yeah, there's some case studies out there showing that.
Is there an optimal zone for blood ketones?
The problem with saying is there an optimal zone for blood ketones is that you're chasing ketones as far as just purely in the blood. But you may have someone that utilizes ketones very well. So we've taken guys in our lab, given them KetoOS, and basically their ketones go up high and then boom, they're gone. The reason why is because they use those ketones very efficiently. Whereas you might have another person who's not so good at using ketones, and so maybe the ketones go up much higher. So the optimal zone is a zone that you feel best at. So so as opposed to just like having to always check, oh, my ketones are 3 millimoles or 1 millimole or 1.5. It's different for everybody. You just need to go based on how you feel.
Why would somebody who's not eating much, basically has a sporadic lifestyle, not be losing weight?
Someone who's not eating much, not be losing weight, and it has sporadic lifestyle. I'm not sure positive on what your lifestyle really looks like and what not eating much is about. What I would recommend is come to Keto Academy next week, because we're going to address how to optimize your body composition. There's a lot of things. It could be your exercise is not optimal. You might be doing too much cardio and not having enough resistance training. The type of cardio you're doing might not be ideal. Like you may be doing too much long, slow, steady state cardio, and that's slowing your metabolism. Maybe you're in too much of a calorie deficit all the time and your body's adapted, so you need to calorie cycle, right? So maybe your diet is not ideal. It's not just calories, it's how your calories are structured, right? Maybe you don't respond well to the diet you're on, so you need to switch to a ketogenic diet. There's a bunch of things that we could talk about, but again, there's so many variables. I definitely suggest coming to Keto Academy.
If someone has kidney function issues, is KetoOS okay to use?
Again, that's really a whole nother clinical topic that I wouldn't really address in this situation. But what I can say is that Dom's research showed no negative effects on the kidneys.
Why would you feel bloated after taking KetoOS?
I'm not, it depends on what you're taking. The original chocolate formula has prebiotic fiber, like inulin, and inulin's a prebiotic fiber, but it also sometimes causes some bloating. But like Keto Max doesn't have that in it, so you shouldn't get any bloating at all with Keto Max. Like I said, if you take the chocolate kind, not the Swiss chocolate, but the old chocolate kind that has inulin, even though it's a lot of healthy benefits in there, but sometimes inulin causes bloating.
Have you had any ketones today?
Yes.
Do you have any other ones up there?
Let's see. Let's see what we got here. I'm just looking at what questions you guys have here. Let's see. Yeah.
Once ketones have been introduced after a concussion, with time, what time does the brain become able to use glucose again?
Good question. So basically, if you have a concussion, it could be as long as 1 week to months after before you can regain your ability to fully utilize glucose. And in fact, if you look at NFL athletes, and we work with a lot of NFL athletes, basically, if you have so many concussions, you may just be in a state where the rest of your life you're not able to utilize glucose very well. So it depends on how bad the head trauma is. What we know is that ketones themselves heal the brain. So that duration will be cut down exponentially. So that's the main thing I would say is like maybe if before it took you 2 weeks to recover, maybe it only takes you 5 days to recover, right? But again, it depends on the severity of the concussion. I can just tell you it makes you recover faster.
Difference between ketone salts and ketone esters.
So basically what you're looking at is like ketone salts would be like ketones themselves bound to like sodium or calcium or magnesium, like a mineral, right? Esters, I'm trying to think of the best way to describe them, but it's almost like ketones bound to like kind of like almost a fatty substance in a sense is the best way to describe like what an ester is. But basically it's ketones bound to an ester that essentially the ester itself can be ketogenic. So the ester itself, being kind of like in the fat family, basically can be converted to ketones, okay? So that's kind of the difference. Ketones are bound to an ester, and an ester itself can kind of be converted to ketones. Whereas like if ketones are bound to calcium or to sodium, obviously that's not going to, the calcium is not going to be ketogenic itself. But that's the difference. As far as like it being better, I think the ketone salts are just as good as the esters.
Any studies on ketones in ADHD?
Yeah, so there are studies with ketones in ADHD. And I can tell you personally they do help. But on a serious note, the thing is that like you're talking about like a focus issue, well, especially when you talk about attention deficit disorder. So you got a guy like myself here. I'm all over the place. Like I'm thinking about a million experiments, so it's hard for me to focus in on one thing. And ketones definitely help me zone in. But again, when thinking about like attention deficit disorder, oftentimes we see an ability to not utilize glucose as well. And so ketones make up that deficit.
Is there or have you seen any research on ketogenic diets and drug addiction?
I haven't seen studies on ketogenic diets and drug addiction. There's a lot of anecdotal reports on that being positive.
A lot of people excited about Keto Academy.
Keto Academy is going to be freaking awesome, man. It's going to be insane. So I definitely, guys, if like I said, Keto Academy is next week. It's going to be in Orlando, where Disney World is. So I definitely do it. So, guys, I'm going to take 2 more questions here. Let's see what we got here. Let's see. If someone, let's see. I'm going to take 2 more questions here. All right. So, someone's talking about more gut health. Again, like you have to think about it for a perspective, especially when someone has like leaky gut. The biggest thing to understand is a lot of times with gut health, you have inflammation. And so Keto OS helps with general inflammation overall. And like I said, basically we've looked at athletes where they had chronic inflammation. It's helped with that. It's the same thing with the gut.
Finish on, someone asked, starving cancer cells, question mark. So can you kind of talk about the mechanism behind how ketones affect cancer cells?
Yeah, so okay, when you talk about cancer, basically, and of course, Dr. Angela Poff, she's going to be at Keto Academy next week, and she's an expert on cancer. In general, cancer cells themselves thrive off of glucose. We see a direct relationship between glucose and cancer growth, particularly in the brain. Okay, so the thing that I want you to understand is that when someone enters into a ketogenic diet and they start doing like intermittent fasting, you know, so say someone has cancer and instead of like eating normal breakfast, they have keto cream and keto S for breakfast. Now, there's two things that happen. Number one is that keto S may lower, especially people who have very high resting blood glucose, it'll lower that. Number two, you're providing your other cells an alternative energy source that they can use, which is ketones, whereas cancer cells are not going to be able to utilize ketones or fat as well. So but they can see stuff. Can you hear? Okay, we're back on. So why would keto OS cause blood sugar levels to go up? To be honest with you, all of our research has shown the opposite. So I'm not sure why you're saying it. It may be that that person their diet itself is not optimal. So I wouldn't say it's the keto OS because all the research I've seen in our lab and other labs have shown the opposite. When people are insulin resistant, ketones help improve insulin sensitivity. Okay, so guys, listen, that's the end. Let me just say something right here. I'm going to end this with this. Guys, there's a lot of exciting things going on right now in the ketogenic world with exogenous ketones, right? I mean, you have to think about this for a second. Like, and it's important to understand this, but like before Prove It came along, exogenous ketones were non-existent, right? In order to get them, when we did research in our lab, you're talking about, you had to pay literally like over $1,000 for one serving of ketones in research. Very expensive. Prove It came along and said, you know what? We're going to change the game. Like, we're going to change the game. We're going to challenge the status quo. They came along and they said that and they did it. And so, and you guys are doing it. And so basically, that's the thing to understand is that, but that initial step was really only the beginning. Then Prove It came out with Keto Max, which was like the next level of exogenous ketones, the next level of energy, a superior patent pending formula for ketosis itself. But the biggest thing that is huge about Prove It is the fact that they focus on everything, the complete and total package, and one of those is going to be Keto Academy next week. And at Keto Academy, we're going to be talking about something really cool, which is how to optimize your body. Whether your goal is to improve like activity, whether your goal is to be able to be more active and play with your grandchildren, play a specific sport, or your goal is to lean up for the summer and you have plans, you know, with your friends, you want to lean up and feel good and look good about your body, or you want to fit into that outfit that you've been wanting to for so long. At Keto Academy, we're going to be talking a lot about that, myself and Ryan Lowry. I highly suggest that you come. It's going to be next week in Orlando. It's going to be freaking phenomenal. Don't miss it for the world. If you were thinking about it, listen, there's a quote we had earlier this week. It was, what was it? Indecisiveness
is the thief of opportunity.
Indecisiveness is the thief of opportunity. Guys, if you're indecisive about going to Keto Academy next week, make the decision right now. Like, make that decision right now. Because it is a thief of opportunity. You need to move and make it happen. I'll see you next week. Thanks, guys.